don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay. Do you understand that? Turn the friggin' frogs gay. Serious crap. Gay. Frogs, friggin' frogs. It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you. Gay. Frogs. Won't you fight for your life? Gay. Frogs, friggin' frogs. I don't like them frogs. Gay. Friggin' frogs. Frogs. Friggin' frog crap. Won't you fight the frogs? It's not funny. I'm gonna say it real slow for you.
Alright, so a buddy of mine named Chris Sheldon wanted me to make this video. We're supposed to have a debate, and I would much rather just do a live debate. Actually, it wouldn't be live. He would have to re-upload it onto his channel because he doesn't do Google Plus, which I think would be cool if we could just do a Google Plus, because that way I know it wouldn't be edited. Anyway, so this buddy of mine named Chris Sheldon wants me to make this video. He wants me to get across my point. Hold on, let me read the exact text message that he sent me. We should just be doing this live. It doesn't make any sense to be doing this, doing a pre-interview, so that I don't know why he wants me to do this. So maybe he wants to know how much I know about the subject. I don't get it. Says, but I got an idea, and this will really generate some buzz for both our channels. I'm going to run out to the store and pick up a few things. While I'm gone, go ahead and make a video expressing your point of view and facts and evidence that you present that you have, and when I get home, I'll do the same. And then as a final debate video, we can get together and live stream. Alright, Chris. My thing, this is, first off, the debate is supposed to be about your Facebook post. Your post was about a statue, and you were saying this statue, let me pull up the actual post of the statue because I don't want to put words in your mouth, Chris. But your argument was flawed. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. So I'm on Facebook now, and let's go ahead and read your post. Alright, so Martin Luther King was against gay marriage. Should we remove his statue? That is absolutely fucking retarded. No offense, Chris, but you are falling for propaganda bullshit, hook, line, and sinker. Fox News has been saying the same thing. George Washington or Thomas Jefferson, he owned slaves. Should we take down his statue too? No. No, we shouldn't take down their statues, Chris. This has to do with Confederates fighting and killing, just like I replied into the post, and then you went on a whole long spiel because it seemed like you want to have the last word and be right about things. You're wrong. You're 100% wrong. This has nothing to do with gay marriage. This has nothing to do with people that owned slaves. This is about people who fought to secede from the Union troops and to maintain the ability to own slaves. They fought and killed and divided our country so that they could own slaves. There was a lot of people that had slaves back then, Chris. It was the thing that everybody was doing. Even the North had slaves, Chris. But to sit there and try to argue why people have been trying to take down these Confederate monuments is absolutely ridiculous. The Confederates lost the Civil War. Losers don't get trophies, especially when those trophies represent hate. And in Chris's mind, even though he's from the West, I feel as if Chris, no offense, I really feel as if either you have always had some kind of bizarre feeling towards this subject regarding African Americans, or you are trying to fit in with the South because you just recently moved to the South. I would like to think it's number two, because number one, if you really have had these feelings from the get-go, that's a little concerning. The thing is, Chris, is this has nothing to do with people that owned slaves. This has to do with people fighting to maintain the ability to own slaves, thinking that it's right. There was a lot of people that had slaves that didn't necessarily think that having slaves was a good thing. There was a lot of people that had slaves that felt guilty about having slaves. It was the only way for them to be successful in that sort of environment. If they were to start paying their slaves to make them free, just give them money and then let them be free, they're going to have to pay the slaves money, meaning they're going to lose money, meaning their economic growth is going to be slower than the South, or they're going to have to just keep their slaves and abuse their slaves. So they chose to keep their slaves like everybody else did. But when they chose to fight to maintain slavery after the idea of slavery being a bad thing and it shouldn't be happening, so they're like, no, not everybody, we're going to keep our slaves. Everybody over there in the North, if you don't want to keep your slaves, then go ahead and you cannot keep your slaves, but we're going to keep our slaves. That's one of the reasons why they seceded. And the Union troops weren't having that. They wanted this country to be a whole. You can't create a whole nother country separate from the country that you're already in. That's why we went to war. And we didn't necessarily, even Abraham Lincoln, he was given a bunch of chances to free slaves. He was. But he chose not to. One, because he didn't think that him being a president, just because he was a president, that he was able to just magically grant that right, that capability, without having a mass vote. There was a lot of people that proposed the idea of him freeing the slaves before he actually freed the slaves. And he probably should have, Chris. He probably should have. But he didn't think, being a president, that he should just go off of what he thinks. He actually waited a while. Okay? He waited until the whole bunch of other people were wanting to do that. He waited until he saw fit. He should have probably done it a lot earlier. I'll give you that. But the reason why we went to war was because the South wanted to secede from the North and keep their friggin' slaves, which was wrong. And they actually fought and killed to keep their slaves. And that's why we should take these statues down, Chris. That's why we should take them down. Over in Nazi Germany, they took down all the statues of Hitler, buddy. And guess what? Hitler's still in the history books. We didn't erase Hitler. You can take your stupid ass statues, and they're not even your statues, Chris. They're not a part of your heritage. So you can't use that as an excuse. You're from the West. Okay? You just moved over there to the South. And you're acting as if, oh, they're going to take my history. They're not going to take your history, Chris. That's not what's going on here, Pard. They're going to take those statues down because they're a symbol of fucking hate. Put them in a museum. Over in Nazi Germany, they did the same thing. And it made things a lot easier. We didn't forget our history, Chris. Nobody's trying to erase your history. First off, that's not your history. Unless you are directly related to some Southerners, which I don't know, maybe you are. But you're from the freaking West, dude. You're from the West. You're not a Southerner. You're from California, dude. That's what I'm trying to get across. And I would love to debate this with you live one-on-one. So if that's why you wanted me to make this video so you could be prepared for what's coming your way, that's fine. I got a lot of other historical facts if you want me to bring those up. But I really don't need to. What I'm saying is pretty much common sense. It's common sense, Chris.
What's up, everyone? This is the Tin Man with the Resistance. If you're watching this, you are the Resistance, and it is Beer 30 again! Okay, for today's video, I think you pretty well know where we're going with this. Hey, the protests, the violence, the destruction of Southern Confederacy statues, so on and so forth. But what exactly are you going to talk about, Mr. Tin Man? What on these issues are we going to discuss? Well, I thought about it, and we could discuss what's happened, or we could discuss why it's happened, or we could discuss why we are so fucking stupid as to buy into it. Like, you know, maybe let's just talk about a little of all three. Now, we already know what happened, okay? Protests. Bad shit. We know. Now, before I really get into this, before I really get into the meat and potatoes of this, what really prompted this video and the way it's being done is my buddy Cole and I are having a little debate. And in many regards, it seems that he and I are not seeing eye to eye, but at the same time are seeing eye to eye. It's actually really interesting, the way it's all kind of playing out, because he brings up a lot of the same points that I brought up, but seems to have a different point of view. And I'm not even sure if I could really call it a different point of view, or even just a different perspective. Because maybe it's just that we're saying the same thing, but the way it's being said is coming off the wrong way. So I think that may, in fact, be an issue here. But what is really sparking the flame in my heart here, so to speak, is the fact that it seems to me, and it's not just these recent events, it's something that's been happening for a while. It seems that people are going back to sleep. You have all these people who are waking up. They were fighting against their corruption. They were exposing the criminal activities of all these people, whether politicians, media spokesmen, bankers, Monsanto, everything. Just all the shit there. People were exposing these motherfuckers left and right. And we were fighting and we were winning, and then all of a sudden, just from out of nowhere, everybody went, just, night-night. Everybody seemed, or I shouldn't say everybody, but a vast majority of people, it seems, went back to sleep. And went back to this left-right paradigm, and the traditional way of thinking that, you know, there is a left and a right, a Republican and Democratic Party, and America is by the people, for the people, and that your government loves you, and all this ass-backwards bullshit. And I don't get what the hell happened. I mean, I missed the boat, damn it. Okay, let's be honest. I missed the boat. The boat left, and I wasn't on the boat. So I have no idea when this happened, how it happened. I'm just kind of stuck in awe that it has happened. I'm like, huh? So when I have these debates with people like Cole, it kind of resonates a little bit to that factor. The fact that, you know, people are going back to sleep. And Cole, I'm not saying that you have gone back to sleep. You're a smart motherfucker, dude. You are a smart motherfucker. You got your fucking ducks in a row. Now, as to whether or not you and I are having a miscommunication and assuming a misunderstanding based on not understanding what the other is trying to say, that is entirely possible. But let me get to the meat and potatoes here and point out first that just because I live in Tennessee doesn't mean I am going to be all pro-South. It doesn't mean that I am pro-racism, pro-Confederacy, pro-seceding from the United States without a viable reason, such as, avoiding being a part of a tyrannical New World Order system, so to speak. I'm not pro-slavery, I'm not pro-racism, I'm not pro-KKK. I'm not pro any of that shit. As far as the South goes, it's a beautiful countryside, a lot of great people. In fact, the only real complaints I have about it is the weather is fucking crazy, the bugs are a pain in the ass, and there is an abundance of stupid people. Okay? Do not get me wrong. That does not mean that every person in the South is stupid. Because, let me tell you, there are some smart motherfuckers down here. But there are some dumb motherfuckers as well. Especially dumb motherfuckers who seem to think that I'm a dumb motherfucker. I swear, do I have stupid written across my forehead or something? I don't know. That's an entirely separate issue in and of itself. But, those, in general, are the grievances that I have. Screwy ass weather, the bugs, and stupid people. Which you get stupid people wherever you go. So, fuck you motherfuckers. But now that that's all clear and my standpoint has been made clear, I'm not a racist, I don't condone racism, I don't support the KKK, I don't support slavery or any of that shit. I'm just an asshole, and I like to examine things thoroughly. I like to look at things and dissect things and get in deep and find out the truth. Which is what I've been investigating in this issue. Now, as far as the protests and everything that bad happened there, okay, we know some truth here. Okay, a lot of the people that were there were hired actors. And for those of you who think, oh, that's bullshit, or want to chop up and say, oh, it's an Alex Jones mark. First off, fuck Alex Jones. The motherfucker has stolen so many of my fucking gimmicks, my shticks, and quotes that if I see him, I'm going to have to kick his balls up into his fucking throat. Okay? The guy wouldn't know legit journalism and activism if it jumped up and bit him in his shriveled up balls. Okay? So, fuck that fool. Fuck him right in the neck. Okay? We need to look at the facts. Alright? Fact. There was an article posted. In fact, here you go. Hiring actors and photographers to be a part of a project in the area. Okay? Now this article has since been removed, but I managed to get a screenshot of it before it was removed. Lucky me. Now, and this is continuing. You had these protests, you had the violence, and now you have the destruction of public property and vandalism of statues. Okay? Question is, why? Okay? And first of all, there's a right and wrong way to do things. Okay? Petition to have the statues removed. If you got a problem with it, have the petition to have the statue removed. You get enough signatures, you can have the statue removed and have it put in the fucking museum. Okay? Now, if you just want to be an upright dick about it and have the statue pulled down and destroy it, and you're destroying public property, that's a criminal offense. Good luck in court. Especially in the county where you just pretty much destroyed their public property and what they consider their heritage. Good luck there. Okay? Stupid move on your part. There's a right and a wrong way to do it. But here's a bigger question. Why, after 150 years or so, is it suddenly an issue for people? Why is a statue or even a memorial of a Confederate soldier, or even any other generals, lieutenants, or whatever of the Confederacy, suddenly an issue for people. After all this time, the Civil War ended in the 1800s. Okay? Here we are in 2017. Okay? You think if there was a fucking problem with that shit, why didn't it happen back then when these statues were first erected? Why is it suddenly now an issue? Or even a few years or a few decades after the fact. I can even give a little bit of grace on that. Why is it suddenly now an issue? Why now? Why today and not then? Well, people are saying, well, it's racist. We need to get rid of this racist history. We need to not honor racist history. We need not honor losers who lost a war. Okay? Valid points. Valid fucking points. But is that really what they're fighting against? Why they're doing this? Or is it just media propagated bullshit by hired actors and stupid little followers who don't have anything better to do, and are part of this whole program of being offended by everything? I need a fucking safe space because somebody said something that I didn't agree with. Oh my God, the world's such a cold and dark place. Give me my mama. Mama. Fair question to ask, don't you think? Okay, is it really about racism and not honoring a racist culture? I don't know. Maybe we need to go back a little bit further into history, and that's where Cole and I were having our discussion. Is, I don't think a lot of people really understand history, and it wasn't just for Cole what I was writing, it was for everybody. And I want people to really pay attention to this. Was the Civil War and the South's secession from the United States and the Union a racial issue? That's a fair question to ask. Let's examine. Start before the Civil War. 1600s, the first slaves were brought over. They were being used, and not just the South, but also the North as well, and in territories spanning westward as the United States picked up more and more territory. And even Mexico was, up until the mid to late 1800s, was using slaves as well. And the majority of the slaves that we were getting were blacks from Africa, which their own country was selling to Europe and to the United States. We got slaves from Scotland, and we all know about the use of Chinese people to build the railroads. So we got 3 different races and cultures being used as slave labor. Okay? So let's not play this whole black and slavery bedfellows thing. Let's not do that, okay? Because there were a lot of slaves of a lot of different nationalities and backgrounds, okay? And before you say I'm being pro-Southern or anything like that, let me remind you that my father's name is McClelland. Yeah. I date back to Scotland on my father's side. Okay? I was baptized in beer. Now, it stands a real possibility that my ancestors could have possibly been slaves as well. Okay? So in no sense of the word am I condoning slavery or saying that slavery is okay in any sense of the word. Fuck no. I am really questioning as to whether or not slavery was really the pretext for the war. Now, as we've discussed, you had slaves in both the South, the North, and heading out west by way of the use of the Chinese to build the railroad systems. Now, this was all taking place in the 1800s as the United States was picking up more and more territory. Now, at some point, contentions began to rise from the 13 southern states and the rest of the Union. Partially due to slavery was an official declaration in the history books. Whether that was actually a permanent issue is yet to be discovered in this little discussion. Now, we have issues such as states' rights. You know, people could argue that, oh, it had a lot to do with the slaves. But that is entirely possible, but as far as states' rights goes, that's more of a government versus state struggle for power. It's a question of who's going to run what. Is the state going to be able to run things from the state level, or is the federal government going to have executive control? Okay, that's where that issue came from. Okay. In fact, I can't even think of all the other issues. Let me put this on just 1 second. I think I still have it. Let's see if I can find it. I should have had this up to begin with. I'm an asshole. See what happens when I start drinking? No, that's not what I want. Okay, let's just Google it. Why did the South leave the Union? Let's Google that shit. Why did the South leave the Union in... Right. Hey, I'm gonna edit that shit down. Alright. Now again, we had states' rights. The leaders in the South wanted the states to make most of their own laws. In the North, people wanted a stronger national government that would make the same laws for all the states. Now, slavery. Most of the southern states had economies based on farming and felt they needed slave labor to help them farm. Again, you know, Cole and I are on the same page with this. So that was an issue. Now, there was also the issue of the western states, as there were more and more western states added to the growing United States. The southern states were worried that this would mean less power and voting rights. You know, that's a potential issue. I mean, especially if you have the North and the South divided on sub-issues, you know, especially those on slavery. You know, you'd have the western states who could either go for the North or for the South, at which point, you know, can tend to turn the tide. Really can. Really turn the tide. So I can see where that was a cause for concern for a lot of people in the South. And then you had Abraham Lincoln. When Lincoln was elected president, it was the final straw for the southern states. Lincoln was against slavery and wanted a strong federal government, two things the South did not agree with. Okay? Now, as Cole had pointed out, Lincoln, though standing in opposition to slavery, wanted the people to take a stand on that themselves. He wanted to let the people decide for themselves as to whether or not they would have slaves. At least that's what I got from you, Cole. Am I correct in assuming so? And if I'm wrong, and if he and I, I should say, are wrong on this issue, historically, please point this out. But moving forward, the South just decided, slavery was one of 5 major reasons. There were probably scores of other reasons as well as to why the South seceded from the Union. Now, up until that point, war wasn't even a question. And even going to war over an issue such as slavery wasn't even a question. It was more of a diplomatic proposal at that point. Should we keep it or should we abolish it? Okay? The South said, we don't want to be a part of what you guys are doing. Okay? We're going to just fly the coop on this. We're going to secede from you, and we're going to be our own little country here. Which could essentially work. I mean, you had Canada to the north, you had Mexico to the south. I mean, yeah, you could have split the United States into 2 parts, and it could work relatively well. I mean, you just draw your borders, right? Hooray for borders. I'm going to get a lot of shit for that one, I'm sure. So, you have the South seceding from the rest of the United States. And that's where the Civil War starts. Okay, is it because of slavery? Not so much, because as we discussed, Abraham Lincoln wanted the people to decide for themselves, and there was still some slavery going on. And in many regards, slavery went on long after the fact, even in the North. Sweatshops all the way into the early 20th century. Okay? Let's not mince words. Many of those children were pretty much slaves. Okay? And even in California and Mexico, slavery still was taking place for a long time, even after the Civil War. Okay? So, let's ask ourselves, was the Civil War really about slavery? No? We've already discussed that some of the underlying dynamics as to where the North and South stood on the issue before, during, and after. But you now have a country that is divided in 2. We now have one country that is split in 2 now. Okay. Many people will probably go, fine, if they want to leave, let them leave. If they want to have their slaves, fine, whatever, let them have their slaves. They do their thing, we do our thing. A lot of people thought that. A lot of people felt that way. Which, for the most part, is probably cool. I mean, not that long prior, in 1776, we seceded from the British government, fought for our independence, and won. Okay? So it wasn't that long ago. We had dealt with all that, and then somebody else decides, hey, we don't like the way you're running things, so we're going to go over here. We're just going to stick to ourselves and do our own thing. Good luck. Thanks for everything. Good luck. Okay. Was there really a problem with that? Not generally, except for one big issue. Let's bring up a little map here. Again, the North. Their big thing was development, structural engineering, so on and so forth. Factories going up. Yeah. All kinds of shit. You know, that's pretty much the basis foundation of the Industrial Revolution. You move out west, you have the railroads. And, you know, a lot of it's desert, so you're not going to get a lot of farming out of there. Any more than you're going to get it in an industrialized area. And then you've got the South. Primarily farming. Not just for food, but also for clothes. You know, you had the cotton business, which was big for clothing. You had wool. You had dairies. Okay? Most of that shit was in the South. Okay? So you've got the railroads to the west. You've got the industrial to the north. And you've got the agricultural to the south. Pretty solid economic structure right there. You take one of those out of the equation, everything goes to fucking hell. Now the South, they were all kind of together on this. And they could have easily built railroads themselves, especially if they did keep slaves. Okay? The industrial aspect wasn't going to negatively impact them that much because they hadn't really integrated into the industrial, nor would the lack of a railroad at that point. So, you know, when you got farming, which is the most essential because food, dairy, clothes, all that, you know, those are kind of essential things, you know, unless you want to be starving and naked. Okay? So, what the South had, the rest of the United States needed. And then that was gone. Okay? So you have people saying, oh, let them succeed from the Union. We'll just start doing farming ourselves. Okay? That would have been easy enough. Or you could just take back the farming and achieve order out of chaos, as the New Order is attempting to do now. And it has done many, many times in the past. We've seen it all throughout history. Order out of chaos, order out of chaos, order out of chaos. The Strongman's Handbook, over and over and over again. Okay? But, you know, a lot of people were saying, fuck the South. Let them do their thing. And we'll do ours. The United States will endure. But the government said, oh, that's a plausible idea, but I don't think that's good enough. Let's just take it back. But you got to get the people behind the war. You got to get people behind you. Because who's going to run your armies otherwise? Who's going to fund the military otherwise? If you ain't got the people backing you up. So you had to have your little pretext. Slavery, yeah, slavery, and the slavery, and the slavery. Hey, that's something people can get behind. Yeah, slavery's a bad thing. Let's end this bitch. Let's show those Southerners that keeping people as slaves is a bad thing. Can whoop ass! Okay? Revolutionary War. No, Civil War, sorry. Beer screaming. Civil War takes place. The people are backed behind this war under the ruse of slavery is bad. They win the war. The North wins the war. The Union is restored. Order out of chaos has been achieved. And life goes on. But again, was that really why we went to war? Was to free the slaves? What happened after the Civil War? You still had segregation and freed slaves, namely the black community, and I say black community loosely as African American would not necessarily be the correct term because you have black nation. You have black people from all over the world. You have black people from Europe. You have black people from Jamaica. Even black people in Australia. Okay? They can come from anywhere. So to say African would be fairly unfair because you don't know where they came from. Especially nowadays, you don't know where people came from, especially in relation to their ancestry. You don't know. But moving on. You still had the black community who didn't have all the same rights that, quote, white people and other minorities did. And there was segregation on a big level. So it has to be asked, if the Civil War was really about ending slavery and equality for all men and women, regardless of their race, why did it take 100 years to end segregation and afford these people the same rights as everybody else in the United States? Well, when you look at the whole thing as a fucking whole, if you look at all the information from the past half hour, the answer is pretty well obvious. It's not about slavery. It never was and never will be. It wasn't about slavery or racism or equal rights. It was about control and power and resources. And as always, money, money, money. Okay? Those four things. That's all it was ever about. Okay? They didn't give a shit about the slaves. They never did. Yeah, that was just a pretext. Otherwise, why didn't they end slavery in other parts of the world? Okay? The South was its own country at the point of their segregation. So if we went to war with them because of slavery, why didn't we go to war with every other country that practiced slavery? Even practices slavery to this day. Well, many would argue, well, we didn't have the means back then to travel internationally to wage war and end slavery. Well, what's stopping us today? Okay? You got slavery going on in Africa still to this day. The Africans are enslaving their own people. You don't think so? Look in the Congo. Look at the diamond mines in the Congo. Those rings that you put on your fiance's finger, all them diamonds, all them shiny rocks, come from slave labor in areas like the Congo. Okay? But nobody seems to give two flying fucks about that shit. No, you're worried about the statues of some Confederate soldiers that died nearly 100+ years ago. Okay? You want to combat slavery and want to push for equality of humanity? Take your fight up with something other than a freaking piece of metal and cement. Okay? End the slavery in the Congo. Okay? And it's not just slavery in the Congo. There's other parts of the world that have introduced slavery as well. Okay? Take a real stand against slavery. You have a problem with racism. Combat the mainstream media's propagation of this divide and conquer bullshit that everybody who has, quote, white skin is a fucking racist. Or the opposite end of the spectrum, that every black person is a gang member or a part of the fucking Black Lives Matter ideology, or that every white person is a member of the KKK or some shit like that. You know, undo the damage that's been propagated there. Start in here and talk to each other. Okay? You want to move the statues to a museum? Fine, whatever. Move them to a fucking museum. Okay? But don't say it was because of one thing when it was clearly for another. And don't say you're fighting for a cause when you're really not fighting for a cause. You're just attacking a piece of fucking metal and cement because it's offensive. Okay? You want to really fight these issues? Really fight them. Okay? Stand up against the propagation of hate. Stand up against the ideologies being propagated that there needs to be segregation between blacks and other ethnicities. Stand up against the notion that all white people are racist. Okay? Stand up to the ideologies that fuel things like the KKK and Naziist hatred and bigotry. Okay? You want to end hate? You want to combat hate? Then combat hate. Don't take your fight to a piece of fucking metal and rock. Take it to each other and say, hey, we all bleed red. Why are we against each other? For Christ's fucking sake. For flying spaghetti monsters' sake. For whatever gods that you believe in sake. Fucking, if you want to fight the hate, really fight the hate. Okay? Now, Cole, you and I can get on video and we can discuss this weekend. You're right, I wanted to get a feel for where you were coming from because, like I said, it seems you and I may just have a misunderstanding but are actually in complete agreement. But beyond any of that, let's just look at things for what they really are. Okay? It's propagated hate. It's propagated bullshit. Okay? Don't buy it. Okay? Look at the real issues. And if you're legitimately against things like racism and bigotry, stand up to it. Forget a fucking statue. Statue can't do a damn thing. It's the people in our society that we need to work with to make this world a better place. So fucking do it. This is a Tin Man with the Resistance. If you're watching this, you are the resistance.